Here,
Ready?
like, you're not even at my house, I'm standing.
All right, ready on this side?
Recording in progress.
All right, good evening, everybody we know, whoever's attending on Zoom potentially. Welcome to Lighthouse Point Budget Workshop 2022, fiscal year 2022-2023. Should we do pledge to the flag?
You can do it twice.
Yeah, we'll do it. It's two separate meetings, so we stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, do I do a quick roll call for the record?
Mayor Van Buskirk,
Here.
Commission President Joffe,
Here.
Commission Vice President Johnson, here. Commissioner Long,
Here.
Commissioner Petrone, here. Commissioner Marshall,
Here.
City Attorney Cirillo,
Here.
City Administrator Levisky,
Here.
Finance Director Olympio, here. Assistant Chief Long, here. Library Director Keys, here. Police Chief Licata, here. Public Works Director Schramm, here. Recreation Director Ward, here. All accounted for.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll kick it off right away with our Finance Director, Ms. Olympio, who will be presenting next year's potential budget.
Good afternoon. I have the budget workshop for the City of Lighthouse Point for the fiscal year 2022 to 2023.
Is it working?
Areas that will be covered tonight during the workshop include the millage and assessment rates, the general fund revenue sources, general fund expenditures, including the capital outlay, and a breakdown by departments, as well as the discussion of other funds such as the tennis center fund, the garbage and trash fund, debt service fund, and the stormwater fund. For fiscal year 2023, the proposed budget represents a 6.4% increase over the current year's projected actuals for revenues and an 8.1% increase over the current year's adopted budget. The 2023 projected actuals are based on the trend during the current year and are continuing to rebound from the decreased revenues that the city received during the pandemic. We'll go into more detail about how the revenues were projected during the general fund revenue section. For 2023, the total government-wide expenditures are 6% higher than the current year's projection. Department heads put in requests that were necessary to the continued operations of the city and which were further reviewed during the executive sessions with the department heads, the mayor, and city administrator. The initial budget deficit between proposed revenues and expenditures started at $1.9 million and was decreased down to $283,000 with thoughtful cuts throughout all of the departments. Next, we'll go into the millage and assessment rates. Per the June 1st valuation, the estimated taxable property values increased 12.24% in total. You're 11.05% on existing values. Countywide, the average increase for municipalities was 10.88% in total and 9.73% on existing values. The millage rate used in formulating the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget is 3.7971, which is the maximum millage rate allowed with a 2/3 vote. Using this millage rate would result in an additional $1.7 million of budgeted revenue, and that's mainly from the tax increases to the property homes values. The same millage rate of 3.5893 has been in place since fiscal year 2012 and would not provide a balanced budget for next year's proposed budget for 2023. There would be the $283,000 deficit. Increasing the millage rate provides a balanced budget and would set aside approximately $330,000 in the city's infrastructure fund that would be used on long overdue infrastructure projects. The 2002 debt service millage decreased by 0.1499 to 0 since the city is no longer paying the note after August of this year. The 2019 debt service millage is lowered by 0.039 mils to 0.3323, and this is due to the increase in property values, and the city only needs to levy the amount of the debt service payments that are required for the year. The total combined millage rate would be 4.1294, which is an overall decrease of 0.0046% when you compare it to the current year's millage rate of 4.1105. The assessed value has the potential to change on July 1st when the city receives the final certifications from the property appraiser's office, and those values continue to change throughout the year if they do any value board adjustments. For the fire assessment, the proposed budget was calculated using the same residential rate of $134.50. The stormwater fees were also proposed to remain the same at $75 per equivalent stormwater unit. And for the garbage and trash fund, the city is still waiting on the rates from Waste Management. For the general fund revenue sources, the largest revenue source for the city is ad valorem taxes, and that's at 56.9% of the budget, followed by utility service taxes at 9.6% and intergovernmental revenues at 7.2%. The current year projected actuals and the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2023 seem to have rebounded from the effects of the pandemic. The projected amounts for fiscal year 2022 were updated in the proposed budget to reflect the current revenue trends, since the original estimates were still formulated when the city was in the pandemic. Revenues such as fuel taxes, state shared revenues, and sales tax revenues were all impacted during those times. And the proposed budget increases some of those revenue sources back to pre-pandemic levels, with certain items now forecasted above those levels. And as always, it's still unknown if the city's revenues will meet or exceed those amounts in the budget. The ad valorem figures are based on the June 1st numbers. The COVID-19 pandemic has not had a negative impact on the property values here in South Florida, since there's a high level of demand and a limited supply of housing. The proposed millage rate is 3.7971, and that would require advertising a tax increase since the rate is above the rolled back rate. For gas taxes, that's based on the city's population and charged per gallon of gas sold in the county. It's budgeted 5% higher than the current fiscal year, and that's bringing it back to pre-pandemic levels since more people are returning to work and traveling throughout the state. For franchise fees, those sources include FP&L and Waste Management, with FP&L being the main driver of that revenue source. The fiscal year 2023 budget is projected 10.4% lower than the current year's projection. Revenues are expected to remain the same, consistent with prior years, and it has not yet been determined if the projected revenue for the current year will be the continued trend or an outlier year. We have received excess revenue from FP&L that hasn't been determined if that would carry forward or not. So it was based on previous year's trends and why you're seeing the decrease. For the utility service tax, there is a 2.3% increase from the current year's projection. Community service taxes are expected to, communication service tax is expected to remain the same. For FP&L utility tax, it's projected to increase by 1.2%, and water utility taxes from Broward, Pompano, and Deerfield are budgeted at 4.9% higher than the current year. For permits and fees, the business tax revenue is on track with the current year's projection, and the projection for next year remains relatively the same. There has been an increase in recent years due to the short-term rental renewals that have been received by the city. The permits projected actuals for the current year and the proposed amounts for next year were projected based on trend and are reflecting a 3.3% decrease. As I stated earlier, the fire assessment was using the current residential rate of $134.50, and that's going to cover approximately 19.7% of the entire fire department's budget. For the intergovernmental revenue, there's 6.1% overall decrease, and that comes from three main sources: the federal, state, and local levels. The city did receive Hurricane Irma reimbursements in the current fiscal year of $88,000, and we are currently working on closing that out. The fine grant revenue,
Corey, sorry, how much is left on that? Do you have it that handy?
we're done. We're not
We're done.
getting
Oh,
it.
that's done. Okay, that's the last of your own money? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The fine grant revenue was also received this year for the police department boat motors of $22,500, and the city received ARPA funding, which $24,500 of it was used for consulting services in the general fund. Federal sources for next year include CDBG grant and additional grant funding for Danwick Park improvements. State sources include state revenue sharing, half-cent sales tax, and for fiscal year 2023, the proposed budget for those revenue items were brought back to pre-pandemic levels. The city also receives funding from the Florida Department of Transportation for highway lighting. Local intergovernmental revenues sources include the MLEG grant, the 5-cent gas tax, and the county local business taxes. Charges for services have a 5.3% increase. There are no changes to the fee in the proposed budget. The public safety has the largest line item with ambulance fees, and that continues to increase each year. Library and recreation for next year's projection. Those are based on a normal return to services for library programs and summer camp. And it also includes rental fees for the use of the community center, since that wasn't previously budgeted. Fines and forfeitures. The current fiscal year's projected actuals are above the adopted budget for code fines and settlements. The proposed budget is in line with prior year's actual revenue.
Corey, before you leave that question, on the kind of along the lines with the Irma question, is anything, and I can't think of anything right now, but you would know, is there anything owed right now in our mind to the reserves? Like, are we caught up? Is there anything like outstanding that we've paid out of emergency, call it the emergency fund, that like is paid out for government reimbursement for a hurricane or COVID or anything related?
No, we received the last of Irma funds, and that's closing out. We already got Hurricane Dorian funds last year.
Okay.
But nothing is pending that needs to be paid back to the city.
Okay.
Okay, to continue with revenue sources, the miscellaneous category has an overall 3.4% increase, and that's comprised of interest earnings, disposal of fixed assets, and other contributions. The interest earnings were affected by COVID with all of the money market and CD interest rates dropping, which is reflected in the current fiscal year's projected and next year's proposed budget. The disposal of fixed assets is based on the trend of auctioned assets, and if there's any capital requests or replacements that are scheduled for next year. And the other contributions include miscellaneous revenues, insurance reimbursements, and donations. For other sources, the city's general fund does receive administrative allocations from the stormwater fund and the garbage and trash fund. The budget also includes capital lease financing for $292,550, which would fund the majority of the capital purchases. The use of fund balance contingency is not included in the proposed budget. The city's revenue streams are continuing to rebound past the pre-pandemic levels, and the increase in ad valorem revenue will offset the majority of those increases that are associated with the budget. If the millage rate is not increased, the city will need to use approximately $283,000 of fund balance contingency in order to balance the budget.
Corey, quick question. Based on your kind of rough preliminary figures, I know we took money out of contingency to balance last year's or this current year's budget. Where do you think it's looking we're going to end up on that?
For this year, when I did the contingency calculation for the end of last year, that money comes out of it. So we have the money sitting aside. It's not in contingency. It's just kind of out to the side on my calculation on my spreadsheet. And that will be covered based on the previous year's surplus. We're still going to need to use that money. We're not going to have extra for this year. When I did the whole projection for the balanced budget for 2022, that still had to stay in there. It didn't decrease.
But we had anticipated using 500 or some odd?
Yes.
And how much do you think we're going to be using of that?
The full 500.
The full 500?
Yes. You just won't, you shouldn't see a drop out of your contingency line item on the treasurer's report because it's already taken out of there. Yeah, but.
Okay. And currently, if we were to adopt the proposed millage rate, what would be the rollback rate?
I can get it for you. It's on my computer.
Okay, well, we got time. We can come back to it.
And Corey, sorry, you said something that I just want to make sure I understand. It says up there, use of budget surplus proposed in the current budget is 0, which I understand because the current budget contemplates what I'm going to call a surplus that will be allocated for infrastructure.
Correct.
But you used the number of 280-something thousand, so I didn't.
That's the number if the city were to use the 3.5893 that
the
the city's always used.
It's the tax increase.
It's gotcha.
Yeah. So if you use that 3.5893, you would have a deficit of $283,000 that you would have to use contingency for to balance the budget.
Understood.
If we do the 3.7 or whatever, that would be a balanced budget.
Correct.
Okay.
For the general fund expenditures, the personal services category went up 9.4% compared with the current year's projection. It does include pay increases for fire and general bargaining unit employees based on their current contracts. A proposed increase for the police since their current contract is expired and still being negotiated, and a recommended increase for department directors and exempt employees. Insurance costs are projected to increase along with the retirement contributions based on salary increases. 401 contribution rates will remain the same, and the FRS rates will increase from 25.89% to 27.83% on July 1st of this year. There's no additional funding included in the proposed budget for the city's police and fire pension plan, since the recent valuation said a contribution was not needed at this time. And this will change year to year based on the valuations that the city receives, since the city is now fully responsible for paying any funding shortfalls. For operating expenditures, there's a 2.4% increase compared to the current year's projection. For capital outlay, there's a 38.4% decrease from the current year's projection. The current fiscal year does include the carryover of a maintenance vehicle for Public Works and a fire rescue transport vehicle. It also includes the Danwood Park improvement projects, and next fiscal year includes additional recreation improvement projects and vehicle purchases for multiple departments, which we're going to discuss in more detail during the department section. For debt service, there's a 38.5% decrease because one of the capital lease payments was paid off during the current fiscal year. An additional capital lease was not used for any purchases during fiscal year 2022. Transfers out does have a transfer to the tennis center to support operating needs of $101,665, $16,500 for Lighthouse Point Aglow, and $10,000 for Keeper's Day.
Is that tennis center outlay higher than, I thought that had dropped. What was that compared to last year? Do you have that? I think it was in here.
Last year, I believe, was
Okay, so it
$91,000,
wasn't
but
that
that doesn't cover what actually is happening this year. So it's going to still be in a deficit.
Low six figures? Okay.
So now to go into a more detailed discussion for the general fund expenditures for each of the departments. For the commission, there's a 29.7% decrease from the current year's projection. This year does include election expenses and additional labor attorney expenses that are not projected for the next year. For the mayor, there's a 17.5% decrease, and that's mainly due to the personal services line item, and that's based on the current mayor's election choices. The majority of the operating expenditures are proposed to remain the same, with small increases to subscriptions and memberships. For finance and administration, that department includes the city administrator, the city clerk's office, and finance, and has a 21.9% increase. Finance has requested a full-time budget analyst position to assist with ongoing and new tasks within the finance department. This position would be responsible for all aspects of the budget, including working with the departments on the initial budget requests, updating the budget book, establishing and maintaining all aspects of the GFOA budget award program, ongoing analysis of the revenues and expenditures against the adopted budget, and budget amendments. This position would also serve as a backup for the majority of finance tasks, including payroll and accounts payable, since there are currently only 2 employees responsible for these vital city functions. There are numerous other tasks that the budget analyst will be responsible for in addition to the budget, including grants, American Rescue Plan reporting and tracking, and special projects. Operating expenditures increased slightly based on known expenses for certain items such as software licenses. The city clerk's office has requested a public records request portal, and finance has requested the continued use of the new budgeting software that was implemented this year. And there are no capital items scheduled for the finance administration department. For the city attorney, there is a 13.6% decrease compared to the current year's projection. The proposed budget includes the city attorney's retainer fee with a 3% increase that's effective October 1st, 2022, along with funding for special items not covered by the retainer. For support services, there's a 1.7% decrease. This department accounts for life and disability insurance, health plan administrative fees, capital lease payments, and IT contracted services. The debt service decreased due to the 2017 capital lease being paid off in the current year. A projected increase of 5% is also included in the budget for property and liability insurance premiums. The insurance premiums will now be due on the new buildings being constructed in the city. A portion of the premiums was paid from the bond proceeds while the buildings were still under construction. And next year, the city will be responsible for all the insurance premiums. The life and disability insurance rates expired on September 30th, 2021, and those were renewed with no change to the rates through 2023. The premiums do increase based on salary rate increases and possible contractual rate increases for employees. For the police department, they have a 13.1% overall increase. That includes pay and benefit increases in the proposed budget, since the contract is still under negotiations. One full-time police officer is also being requested, which would enable the police department to assign an officer to a state or federal task force. The department is currently unable to provide a permanent task force assignment with the current mandatory staffing requirements that they have. Our operating expenditures increased by 10.7% and include a one-time required update to the elevator in the building. The capital outlay request includes the purchase of 3 replacement patrol vehicles and all of the emergency equipment necessary to outfit the vehicles. Technology improvements being requested include a new CVSA computer and software and a higher ground 911 recording system. Both of the units are unable to be updated to their current necessary requirements. Other items to be purchased using federal forfeiture funds will be requested from the police chief on tonight's regular meeting agenda. For the fire department, the proposed budget is 1.5% lower than the current fiscal year's projection. For fiscal year 2022, that included termination payouts for retired employees, the carryover of the purchase of the rescue transport vehicle, and additional overtime expenditures in the department. The request does provide the contractually established pay increases under the contract for fire bargaining unit employees. And it also includes increases in the cost of benefits, most notably pension and possibly health insurance. The proposed budget provides for operational readiness, as well as the replacement of 3 sets of turnout gear, replacement fire hoses, a thermal imaging camera, and 2 laptops for the rescue vehicles. For the building department, it represents an overall 1.2% decrease. It does include the regular salary and benefit increases. The city code rewrite carried forward and it's included in the current year's projected actuals, which is showing as an overall decrease because that's not a recurring item each year. The budget proposal does include a comp plan update that would be performed by Calvin Giordano and Associates. For code enforcement, the proposed budget is 20.6% higher than the current year's projected due to increases in salary and benefits and a capital outlay request for 2 new vehicles. The current hybrid vehicles were purchased in 2014 and have reached the end of their useful life without costly maintenance to keep them on the road. For the Public Works Department, there's a total increase of 32.7% from the current year's projection. Fiscal year 2023 does include the $330,000 transfer to the infrastructure fund for items that are scheduled on the capital improvement plan, and that's under the Public Works Department. So the proposed budget also includes increases to the salary and benefits, as well as the request for a full-time park specialist position, and that position would be responsible for all fields and facilities maintenance, inspections, Parks Department coordination at both of the parks, and this position would also maintain the fields, including striping needs, inspecting and repairing playground equipment, irrigation repairs, cleaning the new buildings, including the community center, and responding to Parks Department requests. Capital outlay for Public Works includes a new Ford F-450 dump bed that would replace the existing 1996 Ford F-350 service truck. There's also a request for a new boat engine for the Canal Pal boat that Public Works uses to maintain the canals within the city. For community bus, there's a 1.1% increase. It includes contractual pay increases for the part-time bus drivers, and operating expenditures are projected to remain relatively the same with possible fluctuations to the fuel line item. For the library, the proposed budget is 15.1% higher than the current year's projected expenditures due to increases in salary and benefits and operating expenditures that include grant writing services, technology purchases, and their books. The current fiscal year's projected actuals for salary and benefits is substantially lower than originally budgeted due to the vacancies that existed within the department this year. And for fiscal year 2023, the budget includes the full staffing costs. Capital outlay requests include the replacement of 2 staff computers in addition to the annual request for books and publications. For recreation, the fiscal year 2023 request is 18.7% lower than the current year's projection. Personnel services are higher as a result of the contractual pay increases and projected increases in benefit costs. The part-time salary line item includes the addition of 2 part-time park monitor positions, and operating expenditures are higher due to an increase in projected utilities for the new community center, and also with summer camp activities being budgeted at full capacity. The capital outlay request is lower than the current year due to the recreation improvements at Danwood Park that are budgeted for the current fiscal year. The capital outlay budget for fiscal year 2023 includes additional Danwood Park improvement projects, including new fencing, replacement backstops, and new dugouts, with the city utilizing the remaining funding available under the 50/50 matching grant program. And the Recreation Department also includes the transfers to the tennis center, Aglow, and Keeper's Day.
When is a good time to talk about some of these items within the departments?
Corey, would you, before we do it all at the end, or would you like us to do it, stop you in the middle when we hit kind of a particular item? Have a preference?
Don't have a preference. We might just have to have some of the department heads come up if it's particular to their department to answer questions, so.
Mike, I'm fine with, everybody fine doing it?
Yeah, just a couple, and I'll just kind of shout out to the department heads. Becky, it says summer special events.
Where are you, Mike?
That is.
Mike, can you give us a page number if you're looking at?
Page number 93. I'm just trying, is it summer rec?
Correct, summer camp is, I don't know why it's counting like that, but it's always been that way, that's summer camp.
So that's considered a special event, okay. Christie, you got electricity up 20%. And what's,
We were not open last year.
They have to come up?
Yeah, I wanted to,
huh? No, there, does she?
I think for the record, they can't hear. us.
yeah, I mean, so it can be recorded.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, because that's one of the questions, and then based, of course, on previous years, too. And then also, this is page 90, books and publications has gone up dramatically, and I was just wondering also, what's the use of the Barker funds?
First, as far as electricity, we were not open our full 44 hours a week during the pandemic. So, of course, being open now, our full pre-pandemic hours, electricity is going to be higher.
I mean, we had the air conditioning running, correct, and most of the lights?
We did, but we do it based on an estimate of the cost of electricity also going up. We did not have the lights on the whole time.
Okay, because I noticed very few other departments had that. And what about the library books and publications, $60,000, a 23% increase, especially when you had limited use the last couple years? I mean, what's the reasoning, I guess?
So the question on the library books is?
Well, it's a 23.5% increase.
Correct. We're back to full hours. We were instructed to cut to the bone, and we did with everything the last 2 years. Now we're coming back online fully, so we're getting all of our books and subscriptions back online.
Okay.
Did you not, were some of those not paid for?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We cut them.
And what about the Barker funds?
The Barker Fund is set up for educational resources in addition to what is normally done by the city. So we have purchased ebooks in the past, but not print books with the Barker Fund, since that is something that was already established by the city.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
I have some other questions while you're here. Okay. Can you explain other professional services? It's always been about 300, now it's 3,300?
Yes, if we are, the state has changed their ruling that we can now apply for an LSTA grant. We will need a grant writer to write that and hopefully manage it if we get it. An LSTA grant, just for everybody, is a technology grant, which would enable us to purchase technology for patron use, not staff use.
Okay. And the next one, other contractual service, again, it seems to be, it goes from 0 to 6,000 and then 3,000 this year. It's all over the place. Can you explain that one?
Yes, we have requested in the application for CDBG for the ability to use vendors. I foresee there being an issue with only being able to teach things with staff and volunteers due to the number of volunteers that have not been able to return. That is something that we have to budget for. I cannot say that we will absolutely get that approved through CDBG.
Okay. What is the situation on your volunteers compared to pre-COVID days?
Pre-COVID, we had 110. Right now, we're running right at about 76.
Oh, okay.
And that includes everybody. That includes my teams and everybody else.
Oh.
Have you put out a request, though? Because I've heard rumors of people that want to come in and volunteer. I mean, if we need volunteers, why don't
Honestly,
we put it out in our
Commissioner
newsletter?
Johnson, I've just been trying to get my new staff trained. They've been there less than 6 weeks. And we're just trying to get them trained before we bring in any more volunteers. We have in the pipeline 3 new volunteers that want to come in, but I have to have staff that's trained before we can also have them in charge of volunteers.
It's not that hard to be a volunteer there. I mean, I was a volunteer there for years, so really, it doesn't take enormous amount of training to teach them how to check in and check out.
I'm
books.
talking about training our staff, our paid staff.
Right, but while you're training the staff, if you had sufficient volunteers, that would take care of itself, so that you could spend your whole time. Couldn't you training the staff and not have to worry about that front desk at all?
I think we have a difference of opinion of what a staff member does and what a volunteer does. Our library runs bare bones. We have 4 full-time, 1 part-time staff member. The reason that we're able to come in so cheap is because of our volunteers. Our volunteers fill all of the positions at another library that would be the support
Right.
staff.
I know that.
But we were down to myself and Kathy Anthony running everything. So bringing on our new staff, which was end of March, April, beginning of June, this month, has been exhausting for the entire staff, just getting everybody up, getting summer going. So rather than trying to train somebody on one job and somebody else on another, I made the decision to get our staff up and running and then bring on volunteers new to help those new staff so that they had really self-assurance in what they knew.
So what do you now expect the volunteers to do?
The volunteers work at the front counter.
Right, that's what I thought. So
Correct.
that's the same as it's always been.
Well, we also have a staff member up there with plexiglass for safety, just like every other department. So we have 1 staff member and 1 volunteer at the front.
You have a staff member at the front?
Yes.
And why do you need that?
I'm sorry, I'm looking over to John.
No,
I don't know why you have a staff, because I've never seen a staff. I mean, I don't mean right now, but I mean in all the years I've worked in there, I never
Once
saw
we
a staff
added
member there.
e-resources and e-books, we found that we need to have a trained staff member up there to answer the questions that are coming in for help.
Could a volunteer be trained to?
We have had that in the past. They were not able to return. We had 4 in the past that were trained to do that.
On the east, on the
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I think City Administrator had something to point out.
Commissioner, I see your point, Commissioner Johnson. We'll take a look at it internally about bringing volunteers in to work with staff and work with Christie, but I think that's something we can take a look at.
Because I think there's people out there that are willing to do it. And
All they have to do is come in and let us know.
We'll take a look.
well, some of them don't know yet. I mean, you know, if you put it out in the newsletter or something and everyone read it, I think, you know, you'd find that there's a lot of people willing to give you some time.
I'd just like to take a minute and say how proud I am of the staff. They've done an incredible job in such a short amount of time to offer 19 programs this summer and have worked nights and weekends to get it done. And all you have to do is look in the room and see that there's teen volunteers and a bunch of,
You can all take a break and do watercolors.
yeah. And a bunch of watercolor right now, so.
Very soothing. Do watercolors.
They don't always get to hear that, so I want to make a point of saying it.
Commissioner Long, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to know, from the pre-pandemic levels, what was your daily count on an average? Or was it by the month, or actual people, patrons coming in physically?
Well, we did not count them. We don't have a people counter at the front. I can tell you that we're now open Saturdays. We were extremely busy. I was working this Saturday, and we were much busier than we were when we thought we were, because families are happy to be able to come in on a Saturday and a night.
I mean, we've had 2 years where it was primarily just closed.
Yeah.
So, I think, our concerns are, as we move forward, is, it's time to look at the programs and see how we can strengthen them in kind of the new normal that we have. And, the big issue is, is there a budget time? We're going to ask the questions.
Absolutely. I do want to say that although the building was closed, we sent home over 8,600 takeout bags, so they were hustling over there.
Yeah, but, I think to Commissioner Johnson's point about the volunteers, I think, a lot of people ask about it. They don't know how to do it, and I think that, maybe you can run 2 parallel tracks, one training your staff, but having some of your best volunteers train the new volunteers, and I'm sure you can probably, especially as some of the the volunteers get younger, that you have an opportunity to do some of that more technical or electronic-driven pieces, such as the e-books that they can be trained on. It's going to make your life and your staff's life a lot easier. So, just a suggestion.
I think your programs are great this year, and nice variety and everything. When you say a lot of people came in on Saturday, are we talking 20? We talking 500? I'm curious.
I would say 30 to 40 coming in and out, getting information, books, using computers, using the Wi-Fi.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else?
Quick question on Public Works.
Okay, that's it for me?
That's
For now.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking with some of your budget items, you got fertilizer and stuff, and I know some of these items.
Mike, can we get a page? Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's page 84. So I know the prices have gone up dramatically on a lot of different things, building materials, things that you guys use on a regular basis. Has that been built into your plan? Because I see fertilizer, $1,000. I mean, supposedly that's going up threefold, fourfold.
So we've been able to keep that fairly flat, specifically fertilizer, because all the medians and things in Pompano Beach don't require fertilizer anymore because of the reuse water. So, and we stretch it, and Everglades handles the fertilizer around here and some of the other areas that they take care of. So we found that's fairly flat for now.
Okay. Okay, good to know. That's my question for now, so.
Okay.
The bulk of that increase is the vehicle, right? You couldn't squeeze another 15, 20 years out of the 1996
Out of the 96,
Ford
if
F-350?
it would roll and steer, yes, but it won't.
At least it has brakes. The last one didn't have brakes, so.
Only if the engine's running, though. I'm sorry. It's bad. And invariably, it failed in the fourth quarter of last year after the budget was all done and everything. So we're looking forward. We need a replacement for that drastically.
Anything else?
Rental and leases went down substantially. Why was it so high this year? Or is it our traffic light on Alamanda Bridge?
Yes. So that's correct. That was $5,000 a month. And so
that draws, but no, wait, where are you looking? Because that shouldn't affect this budget.
No,
Page 84.
It should make it look better because it was higher this year, the actual.
That's why I'm just curious why it was so high, but it's probably the traffic light.
Yeah, that's anything like that would be an individual type, a special case. We wouldn't budget for necessarily. Our rentals are typically, we have a copier machine. We rent some lighting for some of the city events and some other small things like that.
Great, thank you.
Yep. That's it. Thank you.
Who does code enforcement?
Good question. Who answers for code enforcement around here?
genre, I
I
guess.
guess,
Okay, throw it out there and lob it out there.
What
and
page are we
see.
on?
Wait a minute, I can't see. Page 80.
80.
What page?
80.
80.
Other salaries and wages, just who is that? That's all. 20, 20,
That's part-time. Part-time code
Part-time.
officer.
part-time?
Yes, there's
Okay.
one part-time code
Okay.
officer.
All right.
So that's an increase in his salary? Or is it the part-time on the weekends?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
part-time guy on the weekend.
Okay.
Can't think of his name offhand.
I know.
Peter.
Well, he should be able to pay for himself because all the people do their work on the weekends.
He's getting them all.
While we're on that, on the capital outlay, I mean, with the two cars they have, I know they're not police vehicles, they're not they're, what, 2014?
I think that's what they said.
Yeah.
14, 15, I mean, they're 7 years old. Just wondering, how many miles does it have on there?
Commissioner, I don't know how many miles. The issue is, we're worried about the batteries. It's a hybrid. Worried that the batteries are going to go pretty soon. When the batteries go, it's very expensive to replace that in a hybrid. So we want to head it off and get two new vehicles. One thing about code enforcement, and they bring in a lot of money, and they don't ask for hardly anything. So when they come and they ask for two new vehicles,
You listen?
I think so. We talked about budgeting one and budgeting one the next year, but they are such a hard-working, good group, and they bring revenue. That's supposed to bring revenue into the city, but they do. And when they ask, they don't ask for much, but when they ask, we kind of like to give it to them.
And at this point, if they're still operating, they have some higher value, then
They got higher
once the
value.
battery goes, then it's
That's correct.
Basically
And
worthless.
The
Battery's
technology is
$6,000.
getting better. That was early,
car?
that was early
Yeah.
technology for a hybrid.
Right.
Yeah.
So what,
Or an
are we
eight-year-old
going to buy hybrids? We're going to buy gas, or are we going to buy all electric?
No, we're going to buy a hybrid again, and it's it's a Ford, but it's the next one up.
Yeah.
The Escape, I think.
It's not the Escape, it was the next,
All electric is not a.
was it
not
the
a-
Escape? Maybe you're right, maybe it was the Escape, that was thinking of the thing. But yeah, it's a step up, it's what they requested, gives them some more room for supplies and stuff like that, and it is the hybrid model.
All electric is not?
No, they don't have, we didn't put in for the all-electric. Obviously, if that car is utilized during a storm or something like that, that would not be.
Right.
The new vehicle also gives a little bit more height than the current one does. So that was another thought process that went into it, that, obviously if we have issues with standing water or something in the future, we would be able to have something with a little bit more height to it.
Where does the special magistrate, is his salary in this line item?
Corey is, I think it's in, is it in, you have it in code?
Other professional services under the Code Enforcement Department.
Other professional services.
It's the first line under operating expenditure.
$6,000,
Yes.
correct? Page 80, 4 black, the dark bold writing, fourth one down, just below that.
Any other department-based questions, not to foreclose any more, go as Corey proceeds, but
Just a quick question. It's a little more difficult this year than other years because really the numbers that we have from the actuals of 2020 on out, I mean, really were pandemic. And it's tough to compare the pre-pandemic dollars with what we have now if you're trying to create some, is this normal, is that normal? And I don't know if that's something for the next meeting that we have, there's, an extra year to put in there or something. I don't know how difficult that would be, just comparing this year to pre-pandemic year.
Go back to 19.
Well, most of them are just, 20 actual, 21 actual, 22, so it kind of challenges you a little bit as far as there, and I know over the years that, certain things like we always look at our fines and forfeitures lower than we actually always get. We always seem to have a lot more. I like the fact that we're a little closer to our normal average, because a lot of times we just lowball it. Hey, look, we found money. You know, and it's $211,000 this year. We're projected to bring in 244. I know we adopted 135 last year. So it's nice to be a little more consistent here, but I would like to be able to compare to the pre-pandemic.
I can add in as many years before as you want and update the digital budget book so that you can go on and look at it, and it
Okay.
can have 2019, 2018, the data out there.
Okay. I mean, I'd like seeing that just as an average of where we're at. Yeah, I know this is a tough budget, and I know we're looking at every dollar that we have, and I know you guys have already done that. I've had long conversations with the mayor, so yeah, it's not going to be easy. Decisions made.
And everything goes up daily.
Yeah, and I think that one of the hardest things we have to look at is, okay, are we going to see increased revenues? Yeah, okay, value of the property going up, are we going to get a little more incremental dollars in interest and other bonds and stuff that we have from a revenue source? But then on the other side is, with inflation the way it is, you know, meeting the needs of our employees, looking at our overall just inflation with things such as fertilizer and fuel and insurance. So, you know, we got some challenges, and I think all the cities do.
That's why maybe a little budgeting, a little cushion is not a bad, my concern, just to your point, my concern is the inflationary pressures continue, I mean, the inflationary pressures continue, but the property value side doesn't, either slows down or doesn't keep up, and then you're really kind of upside down. So that's what's been playing in the back of my mind.
But we do have a very healthy contingency for, you know, year-by-year issues on that. And the fact that it does not look like we would have to dig into that at all this year, I think is a huge plus.
As long as all the bridges stay up.
That's what. There's an awful lot of huge houses still in the process of being built too, so that's.
You know, a lot of the stuff that's just hitting the boards now, or, you know, pouring cement, it's still a year or two before it's going to hit our tax rolls. And some people try and milk that out as long as possible.
Yeah, well, they're smart.
Yeah.
That's why they're building
My
10.
neighbor's house is going to be on the rolls this year, so yeah.
Whose is?
Our neighbor house.
Corey, you want to proceed?
I just want to answer Commissioner Long's question about the rollback rate from before. It would be 3.2525 as the rollback rate. And the majority vote that could be levied is 3.4519. So both of,
What was that?
the majority vote would be 3.4519. So both of those are below the current year's millage rate.
Corey, could you explain the rollback rate? In layman's terms?
You can only get to ask that question once.
Oh,
For your
did-
first budget, for your first one. Yeah, I know. It's good to always be reminded, because it isn't, it's more complicated than it should, it sounds, in my opinion. It's always been that way. It's more complicated than it should, than it
I'll
sounds.
try, and I explained a little bit, but maybe she can. Hey, I'm the newbie. I get to
I
do
know,
these,
that's
you
what I said,
know?
you get to ask,
Yeah, I get to do
that's
these.
right, that's right, it's your,
Yeah.
Only one.
Then you have somebody trying to break in the house first.
Commissioner Joffe.
I was saying, you only get the first, you get the first bid.
And I will say it's commission question every year,
I asked
up into this year.
it.
Every question every year is not so much about the rollback rate, but is when is the, how many more years do we have on our debt?
Yeah, right,
2020,
right.
2002 debt.
Finally.
Now it's zero.
We'll all be dead by the
So the rollback rate is the millage rate that you would have to levy in order to get the same amount of taxes for the previous fiscal year.
Try to take off.
So since property values have gone up, the rollback rate is lower than what we used in the previous year, because you're trying to get the same exact, basically the same exact amount of revenue that you received for the previous fiscal year.
Okay.
So basically, if we brought in $5 million, a hypothetical number, if we brought in $5 million gross dollars in property taxes in last fiscal year's budget, how much, since property values have gone up, the millage rate would actually have to be, could be less to generate that same $5 million?
I understand.
That's the, the rate, the millage rate to generate that same $5 million is the rollback rate.
Okay.
And that's why when you keep the same millage rate, it's advertised as a tax increase.
Because you're generating actual more tax dollars in the door.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And in essence, you know,
Thanks for asking.
Oh.
yeah.
Probably.
But you will have residents say, look, I know the values went up, why are my taxes going up even more? And that's, where we have to, as a collegial body, have kind of one voice
Yes.
of what we're doing and what they're getting for it.
Good point. Thank you.
Okay.
Rock and roll.
So we are going to go out of the general fund and into the tennis center fund. The total overall budget decreased by 38.8%. There's $151,000 projected in the current year, $151,000 for next year, and compared to the current year's projection is $246,000. The current year does include termination payouts for the retired employees. Personal services decreased due to the conversion of the tennis center employees, with all employees now being fully contracted instead of only partially contracted. For operating expenditures, there's a 52% increase, and that includes the resurfacing of 2 clay courts, the replacement of windscreens as needed, and clay for court maintenance. The daily maintenance of the courts has also been contracted out, so that's why you're seeing the personal services go down and operating expenditures have a higher increase. For capital outlay, it does include the conversion of a storage closet to a family bathroom and renovation of the existing bathrooms at the facility. And the general fund transfer that would need to be provided is $101,665, and that would provide for a balanced budget for the next fiscal year based on the proposals. For the garbage and trash fund, we're still pending the rate schedule from Waste Management, so I don't really have any information as of this meeting. As typical, we normally discuss that in more detail at the July 12th meeting once the rates have been received and we have actual proposals on the assessments. This fund does include a transfer out for the general fund administrative allocation of $85,000. For the debt service funds, the 2002 debt service is no longer included in the budget, and the final payment is going to take place this August. For the 2019 debt service, the millage rate is going to be reduced from 0.3713 to 0.3323. This is the 4th year of debt service, and it's slightly lower by $1,000 with a total of $974,850.
I thought that was flat. Why did it go, it's not flat? Oh, no?
They have administration fees
Oh,
and other
the
fees.
interest is flat. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Fees and
only
costs.
about $1,000 that it
Okay.
goes up and down. For the stormwater fund, there's no change in the stormwater assessment in the proposed budget. The current rate is $75 per equivalent stormwater unit, and that is approximately 5,500 square feet of impervious area. For the budget increase, it's 15.4%. The fiscal year 2023 includes repair and maintenance projects such as pipelining, system cleaning, and miscellaneous repairs. And the operating expenditure request also includes $64,000 for lining and repairs of the interconnect pipes along the canal ends at Northeast 39th Street. A drainage project for Northeast 34th Court is also included in the amount of $275,000. And based on this proposed operating budget, we'll need to use $239,411 of budget surplus to balance the stormwater fund's budget. It also includes the administrative allocation transfer to the general fund of $75,000. And any major projects above $35,000 would require separate commission action, even if it's in the proposed budget, including those in the infrastructure plan.
Can I ask one question? It's for probably administration, and maybe we're learning this. With this stormwater master plan, does anything in that, redoing that, does that affect, because I'll admit I'm not the master of what an ESU is. I don't have to do with square footage and stuff, but is that something that actually gets adjusted to perhaps when you read, no? Okay.
No, that's a whole different process than we're asking for here.
Okay, just curious. I mean, I know the dollars are, but how that's calculated, I mean, I know we control the rate, but how it's calculated or how it's assessed by areas, could that be modified by the stormwater master plan update?
No, we would probably have to hire a different consultant to do that type of work.
We got plenty of them, so I'm not suggesting we don't need any more.
GSG was the one that did that initial stormwater assessment for us, and a stormwater assessment is a different process than updating a stormwater master plan.
Fair enough, okay. Thank you.
They sound like oranges, but they're not.
Yeah.
So that concludes all of the information that I have for you tonight for the workshop, for the general funds, revenues and expenses, and all of the other funds for the city. So So if you have any further questions or anything you want to discuss, now's the time.
All right, Commissioner.
Mayor, I have a question on, and I guess it's going to go to you.
Sure.
Or John. We budgeted for 2 computers for the rescue trucks. Are they replacements or are they new?
Oh, the MDTs, the mobile digital terminals? These are new ones for the trucks.
The new ones, we have.
We have them already,
Yeah,
but
so
they're
these
new
are-
ones for the trucks.
Well, these are replacements
Yes.
for what's already there. And the thermal imaging camera was budgeted last year, was not bought, or we're buying another one?
No, this is a secondary one, correct,
Okay.
Chief? Yes, sir. That's the second one.
Good, okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Marshall, while we're on you right
Nope,
now? Any
nope.
other things may pop up, Commissioner Patron?
I like to be last.
Oh, jeez. First of all, Corey and John, this is tremendous. You did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
I mean, it's a little overwhelming right now, but I can just imagine it. Quite a bit of effort that went to that.
You want to give a kudos to the mayor, too. I mean,
Oh,
you don't
yes.
want to embarrass-
Put his picture in.
Engineer,
It's
too.
the first time- I did notice his picture's in it now, that was never in it before. But the layout was, I complimented Corey as well, the layout and how it's presented has changed, and I do like the new layout.
I would just say that this is all Corey's doing on the layout and the change, and I think if you look at the digital version on the link, it's very impressive. I recommend if you're able to add that stuff for Commissioner Long, that you guys should all take a look at it, because it truly is very impressive. And all the department heads figuring out, Corey limited screaming at them to figure out how to enter the information, but it's just truly a 21st century way of putting this together, so.
Yes, if you haven't checked out the new digital budget book, please do so.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so first question is on the budget expenditures by expense type.
We get a page, Commissioner
Oh,
Patron.
page 26.
Thank you.
Why did code go from, on code enforcement, 0, and then all of a sudden 60,000? Page 26?
Where are we?
Under, in the middle, capital outlay? Oh, that would be the cars.
Those are the
Excuse me.
vehicles.
That would be the vehicles,
Those are the
okay,
vehicles.
thank you. Let's see. Page 55. Why is the labor attorney so high? 48,000 over budget, is that because of all these delays in negotiating the police contracts and things?
Yes, it's all for negotiations, PBA negotiations, that all goes into that line item. If there's any other, yeah, go ahead, John.
We had a large discrimination suit, federal discrimination suit in the fire department, and a labor attorney had to work that. Very, very expensive. The city came out in good shape,
Okay,
but.
that's settled now, and,
Yes, it's settled, but it cost a lot of money.
And that's, so that's not all, that is not all related to union negotiations.
No.
okay,
No,
okay.
no.
Well, that's, okay.
But
Sorry to
it's
hear
still
it, but I
labor-
feel better now.
Still
so.
labor
Yeah,
aspect of
Perfect,
it.
okay. Page 60, the public records request portal for $9,500. Is that something different than we do now? What is that all about? Since you, Kathy.
Yeah, this is a program that would be, it would digitize our public records request system that we have right now. Right now, we track all of our public records through an Excel spreadsheet. We're also working with the police department on their public records as well. This will help us streamline the process. Public records would go to the portal online and would go directly to each department. We would be able to oversee it, make sure that everybody is on track and on time with filling those public records requests. But it's a smoother process.
Okay.
There's a lot of bumps in the road now with the way that we handle our public records requests, and this would just streamline the process.
Okay.
And also be used for a way of performance measurements if anybody ever wanted it, to see how long it takes public records to be, requests to be fulfilled, et
Oh,
cetera.
okay. And this would be an annual?
Yes.
It's like a rental
Of course,
or
the
lease,
first
whatever.
year is always a little bit higher than the next, just for implementation fees.
Oh, okay. Also on page 61, the request for a new budget analyst, will that person be able to write grants? Would that be part of his or her job duties?
I would say, looking at what Corey and everybody's going through, the answer is no. That person's going to be completely focused in on certain aspects of payroll, recuperating of our funds. Currently, we have American Rescue Plan dollars. There's a lot of paperwork and information that goes into doing bond stuff. I mean, we have a ton of stuff that's, I know some people have asked Corey for information or stuff before during this budgetary time, but this process takes up every ounce of her time from May to into July. And we're currently want to make sure that we also have the right staff to make sure we're doing the payroll correctly and when we're paid, because payroll ends on a Wednesday and people get paid on a Friday, correct?
Correct. So if someone is out, if my accountant is out and for some reason I wasn't here, which I always try to make sure I am here, no one's getting paid, basically, in a timely manner.
And as I recall, someone correct me, especially with the American Rescue Plan money, we had originally hired, or thought we had hired somebody that was going to help with all that. We decided to go in a different.
Well, that's because they also changed the thing. They went down from where it was going to be a very robust style of reporting versus once you realize you're underneath the $10 million threshold of what we received, that then our reporting became less of a burden on our.
Right, and I guess my point is originally some of that work with respect to the American Rescue Plan was going to be handled by that company, but since it really didn't make sense to.
It was $200,000 what they wanted, John?
Phase 2 is $200,000.
$200,000.
So we had to bring that back, and we had to bring that back. I think we have to report. We want to use the money.
Yes,
so-
Which she's already
I did the
done
first report
Yes.
at the end.
So we
of
brought it
April.
back in-house, so I think kind of that, it's contemplated that this budget analyst is going to help pick up the slack on some of that.
But it had a lot of stipulations at first, is why.
Yes,
isn't it,
correct.
that we hired that person, and then they
said-
just about did away with
Right.
what you
because
had to.
of the $10 million threshold.
Right,
That,
right.
that was a huge
Right, so that was-
windfall for us, also on time consumption.
Okay. We seem to spend an awful lot of money on software licensing in all the different departments. Are we as efficient as we can be with that?
What kind of license?
Software licenses?
license.
It seems the amounts
Well, they
seem to be
get-
all over the place. It's just,
There's no way
It is
around
what it
that.
is.
If we use their software, we got to get licenses for it, and there's no way.
there's no bundling or.
It's expensive, even like the clerk was just talking about, that software program, $10,090-some $100. It just seems outrageous, but that's the price that they get.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
I would just say that looking through, talking with all the department, the licensing issue, and also getting the upgraded, like, this is a new software system base that we paid differently for this time. And unfortunately, you're also paying for what you get, right? So we were a little cheaper before, we're gonna pay a little more, but we're gonna have a better budget system, not only for us to read and our department heads to enter, but also for our residents who wanna go and look. They're gonna be able to grasp and look at all this stuff and kind of put their own, look at it. So I think you are correct. We should have all been in the computer technology business.
Right.
Because that seems to be where the money's at.
Okay.
Commissioner Long. Oh, you don't, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hyde, but.
Go ahead. You can-
Just, and it kind of gets into that a little bit with technology is, there's been conversation for a long time about the building department and bringing that into at least this century. And I noticed we have no increases. In
Well, that
fact,
was
we have a
good.
1.7 decrease.
That was going to be my question. I mean, that was
Yeah.
going to be my question.
Have we done anything towards moving that forward as far as improving the technology, more online permitting, more submittal of applications and plans and everything else electronically, and to be more efficient, to be...
So since, if you don't mind, John,
No, go ahead.
since that has been one of the, since I've taken over as mayor, it's been one of the things that John and I worked diligently on, hours upon hours with Calvin Giordano. And I could tell you, originally, I was not very happy with how they were performing. And ideally, what has happened is that they have brought together some of the new aspects that other cities are utilizing, that they're utilizing these other cities. We are about ready to go live with online, as I mentioned before, doing an online permit, not online permit submission yet, that will be to come, but it's going to be an online inspection that you're able to sign up for. And with that, we're also going to a different fee schedule. And if you guys remember, the fee schedule, the big thing with the building department is that it cannot bring in revenue before we've had this conversation. So it physically can't bring in revenue. The fees that the building department bring in have to pay for what they have. So updating the fee schedule will then allow us to bring in a different revenue stream or an increased revenue stream, which will allow us to improve on our technology. And there is, in the building department for the upcoming year, there is a technology increase, but you're also seeing a revenue increase too. So that's where the balancing of that budget goes, and that's why it should maintain some sort of resemblance of plus or minus 1 or 2 over what the proposed budget is versus what they're bringing in.
So would that increase in technology be under the engineering services, or no, I'm sorry, not there. I mean, where's that?
What page is it again?
Page 7778. I'm just looking, we got.
Telephone, postage, rental, software licenses.
Should be under software licenses.
Yeah, 1.5%. I mean, $4,400.
Computer
Yeah, that's actually about what the current, so just to give you a little more knowledge,
shows you how fancy our computer software is for the building department.
That is correct.
Which could be the problems that we have as far as.
No, but to Commissioner Joff, I think exactly what he's saying is that we already had a lot of the stuff, a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the subscription stuff, a lot of the base and unfortunately, we just, however we were at, we never utilized it. Now, we're going to go on and on. I don't want to use a proverbial flip the switch, but for $4,400 extra, we get to flip a bunch of switches and we can do some modifications.
There's different modules as part of the overall.
So I think the point is, I guess, the point I was looking at is, it's not up much from the projection.
Right.
No, so we're not, so we have it, we're just not basically utilizing it, for lack of a better
I
term.
wasn't going to use that term, but
Yeah,
sure.
I mean-
I was using the flip the switch theory. But yes. Correct.
Well,
there
but,
is-
but is that gonna, and you said you've been working with Enlighten a Fire under Calvin Giordano, which is great to hear. Are we gonna see, we pay Calvin Giordano, right?
Yes.
So are we gonna see increased Calvin Giordano expenses likely because we flipped the switch?
No.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's what I'm
No,
asking.
because we pay à la carte, and I would love the à la carte menu that we pay for them. What I mean that is that we pay for a building inspector, we get a building inspector. We're not paying for a staff member, to be a city staff member that sits there every day. We pay by their hour or by the plan or whatever process there is. The idea is that this should make all of them more efficient. But since we're into the building department, the aspect of going to a complete digital framework, having spoken to Peter, our head building official, and several people from Calvin Giordano and other places, we don't want to do that. I would have thought we would have gone, because what happens when one of us, let's just say Jason comes in and wants to put in a fence, and he wants to do an owner-builder, he would have to figure out how to go through the whole entire digital aspect of it if we went 100% digital. But what our goal is to do a hybrid style that our experienced builders, or a builder that really wants to do it, or Mr. Marshall may be very good with CAD and do his own drawings and be able to put it all on digital and through the building department online, but the person that's
You
not.
still want to service the guy that literally fills out the form and draws the picture on the piece of paper and submits it.
Correct. So, and that takes also personnel to input that, right? Because we don't want to penalize someone because they're not hiring a full-time architect to put in a fence, that they're just putting together the Florida Building Code, putting that together, figuring out their survey, and so on and so forth. So I think that that's part of the whole entire picture that we're working our way to.
But would we, I mean, how much, when we talk about storage space, what we currently need physical storage space for all the plans, about what percentage would be reduced? I would imagine if someone's a home builder.
Very little.
And let's say.
Very little, if not at all.
Really? Because like if someone comes in here and they can do it electronically, I mean, I'm sure they're doing it with other cities, it would say bing, and you don't have a stack this big.
There's still things that have to be printed up that have to be on the job site. That's the problem.
By building, by the code?
Yes.
Physically present, printed,
Yeah,
physically.
But it doesn't have to be in our physical building, does it?
Some of the stuff does and some of the stuff does not. Having spoken to Peter, he was, educating me on what they have to have. There are some things that won't have to be printed out, but then there's, separate copies and then there's also state statutes.
Paperless building, sorry to interrupt, but it sounds like the paperless building department is a myth. It can't exist.
I would say correct. Having been down the government route of paperless usually means more paper. For some apparent reason, I'm just being honest. I've done this before, plenty of times. And it's true, but there are, Peter has been excellent with trying to put together exactly, and I know this from working with them at our community center and our fire station, and Calvin Giordano and Robin, who doesn't work for Calvin here, but they all really try, they've really tried to show us and help us and understand. We've also told them that under no circumstance that we need a level, we expect and demand a level of service that we were not receiving. And they are definitely doing their best to pick up that level of service. And there's a lot of things that, you go, well, why can't we have this? And you go, well, you already have it. Just tell us and we'll plug it again. You go, well, we didn't know that. You go, well, you didn't ask. And then so it's, that's part of the issue, and they're really becoming more proactive on that stuff. But they do need more server space, so they may lose a couple files, but in the end, you got to get server space, and then you also have to have these larger digital printers to print out the plans. So although it's some digital on some levels, they also still have to have it, to mark it up. And I'm sure, I hope maybe in the future they'll have an iPad that they could go around and digitally do it with. But when they go on a building thing, they got to open up the plans and go, okay, all right, there's supposed to be 6 outlets in this room, or where the
Do we
stack
recover those costs when we have to go print out these plans?
It'll be part of the fee structure.
Okay.
Commissioner Long, we're still on you. Anything else, or bounce around?
Not at the moment.
Commissioner Johnson, anything?
No.
Okay. We'll go back. Did you have other items, Commissioner Patron? I'm just kind of bouncing around here, sorry. You can come back if...
Like follow the bouncing ball.
Page 75 about the rescue transport. Let's see. That was what budgeted in 2021. Did we ever receive that? I think I remember reading something about that. We had not.
Where are we at?
Page 75.
The vehicle?
For the rescue transport that I guess was previously.
No, it has not been received yet.
No.
When is that expected? Do we know?
We talk to them regularly. The problem is we wanted to.
Come on up, Chief. Chief, come on up, please.
Sorry. We talk to that company regularly, and the problem seems to be that they're not making gasoline rescue trucks presently. There's not a big demand for it. The city mechanic, the ex-fire chief, decided that gasoline would be the best for us because of the short transport times, and we're on the list. We're still waiting.
What are they made of? What do they fuel them with these days? What?
Diesel.
Diesel. Oh, okay.
No one.
Is that a higher cost than gasoline?
Right.
It's a higher cost, it's a bigger profit margin for them, so that might be one of the issues also.
Okay.
But once a week, I talk to the 10-8 rep that sold us the truck. He rarely has any good news, but he's in contact with Ford. And I mentioned any truck that we can get might be acceptable, because he found a Dodge, and I asked for the information on the Dodge to present it to see if that would be okay. But
is there any requirement that it be delivered in a fixed period? No?
No, sir.
Why
Next
can you-
one there will be.
Yeah. So there a possibility?
Why can't you change to getting a diesel one if they're all made out of, if they're all diesel? Why did we say we want a
sure
gas?
Could. The city mechanic said that's a lot of the problems with repairs, is diesel is meant for greater distance, highway mileage, and we rarely do any of that. So his recommendation was gas. So we went with gas.
But other cities are the same way, short distances to hospitals and, you know.
And most other cities are diesel trucks. I think at the time, the increase was $25,000, $30,000.
More for
More.
diesel, wow. Well, at some point, we're going to have to either, they're going to give them a date that they're going to have to produce a vehicle, or we're going to have to cancel our contract, I mean.
It's been a year.
Wow.
He has one in the company that was built to kind of show it off to other departments, and I inquired about that one, if we could see
Yeah,
it
demo
and
model or
possibly buy that one also.
Where do we stand with the engines and the ladder for replacement? When is that going to have to happen?
I believe that's 3 years away for the engine.
What year is the engine going?
It's 15.
We can keep our engine 20 years. That's what we've done in the past. We kept them 20 years. Ladder truck could go 20 or 25. It just depends.
17.
So the engine is what year?
I don't, I was asking Tony, I don't know off the top of my head.
15, I think.
I mean, if it's going to take 2 years to get a truck, then maybe we should start thinking about whether we're going to.
Not in the last 20 years.
Yes, sir, I understand.
No, I mean, no. If it's 15 years old now.
Oh, I thought you said
it was the 2015.
It's a 2000.
7 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
7 years old.
15 years old. Okay, sorry. Chief Donzella was here when we got the engine and the ladder.
I was actually on the commission, so it was right when we first got up here. Becky was taking her mind, I think she was here also.
I'd be interested in knowing, just to give you some more ammo, what our, do we even have options? This is probably a city attorney question, like, do we have the options to cancel? Do we have the option of canceling the contract? Does it make sense to cancel the contract if the price has gone up? Maybe it's better to wait, because, I mean, you have to balance getting it reasonably with the cost of everything going up, but I don't even know if we can cancel the contract. I would think when you haven't delivered in a reasonable amount of time, you could, but you have to look at the contract, but.
Thank you.
I know, yeah. I'd like to know what that option is, because a year's a long
And I was worried about the
With no
increase
end in sight.
cost
Yeah.
also.
Right. No, it's a balance, I mean, but.
Just remember trying to get a car right now.
Yeah, right.
No, I
You
know.
know, you'd be a year plus out, and they're still probably dealing with the chip issues, just starting to loosen up a bit, but, definitely look at the contract, see what we got, but I'd hate to sit there and say, well, hell with you guys, and
No, I don't know what I'm
realize
saying, but
4 years before we get another.
But it's not even a conversation if we can't cancel the contract.
And I think we're lucky that they're still moving to one thing half, so.
Yes, sir. And that company, 10-8, is the one building the truck, and they were a lot more reasonable than the other companies, the other rescue truck builders.
Rescue trucks are not cheap.
All right, commissioners? Commissioner Long?
Want to talk about some capital projects?
Sure.
Master planning, paving. I know we've talked about the American Rescue Plan dollars to invest in a lot of paving, Lighthouse Point Drive. I know everyone's all excited about that. I'm just trying to figure out, because I do see the use of it in different places within our budget this year for capital projects. Just wondering where the commission believes we should be going with some of the paving issues and moving that forward with these dollars.
Commissioners, any comments? I think I've made my thoughts clear. I think we should, although we voted almost $1 million to pave Lake Placid, which needed to be paved, but, so that's why I didn't vote against it, so I'm not going to deny that, but I also think the major thoroughfares in the city that everybody utilizes every day, Lighthouse Drive, 39th, I think those need to be looked at. That is not, I want to make clear, to the exclusion of other parts of the city that I know need to be paved. But I think we kind of I just don't want to be put in a position of, you pave this area, not this area, and everybody drives on Lighthouse Drive. So, and I'm not saying all of it needs to be done, so most everybody at some point, whether you're going to somebody's house, or you go around the big curve on 49th, or you go up and down 39th, And I think those are things that we should look at as priorities from a paving standpoint. So that's my thoughts, but I'm open to it because I know, there's other areas. I mean, we need to pave, the whole city could be paved.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say.
With Lighthouse Drive, I think that's concerned, I'd say from the roundabout north, for sure, to a minimum of pretty much 39th. Because after that had been paved, but then once you get to the lift station.
Half of it's paved,
Yeah, you get to that part, moving that up, so, those are just areas, and then I think, 39th at least to almost the yacht club area, there's the worst of the worst, because there's a lot of milling there, we gotta look at, and I know we talked about this the last meeting with some of the issues we have with the settling of the stormwater and the sewer, or actually the sanitary sewer, which creates kind of just a driving hazard. And, I know in my area, I look at it and I can see that there's areas that, have been patched here and there, left and right, but again, I would even put Lighthouse Point Drive as priority because everybody drives on that, and that should be probably the best kept street. Our flooding issues that we have there occasionally might be able to be improved to get the right pitch on it. So, I know we talked about it, I'd like to see if we could move that forward somehow.
Any other thoughts on paving, commissioners?
I agree with Lighthouse Drive. That's.
Well, if we're gonna
Should be the
do
best.
Lighthouse Point Drive, then that means that we need to, like, where 49th Street is, we need to, if we're gonna raise the seawalls, we need to do all of whatever we do, whether we do 39th, we do Lighthouse Point Drive, wherever there's those issues, that all should be done, because there's no sense in going back and revisiting that 5 years from now. If we're going to do this thing, you're going to do it right, and you're going to spend the money wisely, if we're going to do these things. That's the issue I have.
And I think that's the hardest. Do you have anything you wanted to say?
I just wanted clarification on this when it says mill resurface area of the city south of Sample, west of Lighthouse Drive. What specifically does that mean? Lighthouse Drive runs north and south, so you're saying everything to the west? What is page 90?
99?
99.
South of Sample and west.
So it's all the.
South of Sample,
the
but
streets
west
that
of
go
Lighthouse Drive.
east-west.
What specifically?
All streets that go east-west, does that go west of 21st too?
Yes, correct.
I thought those were paved more recently.
If we can afford it, it would depend on funding at the time, but yes.
I thought the ones west of 21st got done more recently.
Got to be BC before Chuck. Not since I've been there, so I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, and again, we look at areas that have the most vehicular traffic.
Yes.
Or a lot of construction that we've had, with sewer pipes and all that stuff, but, and I understand you want to do sections, because, obviously, the mobilization is half the cost. But.
And the county is presently working on lining the sewer mains in that same section. So if we do that a couple of years from now, by then that should be.
But they don't tear up the asphalt in any way, shape, or form.
No.
And just like, I think, and I'm going to ask, Mr. Marshall here, when you talk about the seawalls, are you concerned about them ripping up the paving?
No.
With that, or just the
Obviously,
issue that we need it?
It's going to be a drainage situation, where if you're 2 feet higher, let's say where the little farm store is there, is that 48th Court. If you raise that 2 feet, now you may not get the runoff that you get from the road.
If you pave it at the same level.
So you're saying if we're moving up the seawall cap, for example, 2 feet, I mean, does the water currently go off over the seawall, or would we have drainage there that would dump it into the canal?
There is some drainage there, and a lot of these things will be addressed in the stormwater master plan, we expect.
Okay.
And we're having a seawall study as well. So the grades, we can, if we raise the seawalls and it creates a damming effect and a pooling effect, drainage will have to be added. We can't raise the roads, our that can not only affect we can push flooding towards the homes, and they're having the same deal in Miami and Miami Beach, where if they raise the road, they have to build a retaining wall, and I don't even know how much that would cost it per mile to do that. That would be tremendously expensive. So, yes, milling and paving is the low-hanging fruit. Some of the drainage issues are going to take years to complete because they're expensive. So there's probably going to be a milling and resurfacing cycle in between some of those things getting done.
Your point is well taken. The problem
Yes.
is, if we wait to do all of this other stuff, figure out what the stormwater is, figure out what we're gonna do with the seawalls, not alone figure out how to pay for it, you're always gonna be waiting to pay. That's my concern. I'm not minimizing
No, I understand.
anything you're saying, because you're absolutely right. But
Does it hurt to wait 7 months till we get the study, the stormwater study, so we know what issues potentially we could eliminate by repaving a street and then being done with that completely?
That's perhaps, I totally agree, and I honestly think that when we get the stormwater master plan and we sit down with Kimley Horn, there's going to be adjustments to the future. I think we need to look at, right now, we're going to do 38th Street and 21st Avenue, and we need to do 34th Court because we got business over there practically flooding when it rains just normally hard, not tremendously hard. But the stormwater master plan, I think, will adjust our outlook for the next 20 years and give us at least a semblance of a plan versus reacting to there's public.
So is with the recommendation, to your point, is that's why I asked the question when we approved the milling and paving for Lake Placid, I don't want them doing the stormwater master plan based on how Lake Placid is paved right now. They should do that part after. So I guess the question is, everybody's hot to try to pave, but you want to do it in a way that makes sense. Is the recommendation then to wait to do further paving until the stormwater master plan is done?
Or is it areas?
Let me jump in here a little bit. No.
No.
Okay.
We don't think so.
Okay.
The stormwater master plan is a 20-year plan going forward. Paving should do, this is just milling an inch and paving an inch. We're not raising the roads. You know, if we're doing something that comes with a stormwater master plan as far as the roads, you might have to raise the roads with road rock inches, or maybe a foot or so, and then build up the seawalls. That's a tremendous undertaking. What we're talking about here is just milling and paving.
We're talking about maintenance. We're talking about maintenance and maintaining the road.
Leveling coat. So the area Chuck's talking about south of Sample Road, that area, and north of the Pompano Water area, because they're paving all that, because they're doing the reuse, the majority of it. Some streets are not, because they're running pipes, different streets, but pave that whole area in there is really terrible. And we can get rid of some of the ponding water just by paving, but raising seawalls to 5 feet, we really got to talk because what are the unintended consequences of raising city seawalls to 5 feet and not someone's living next door, has their house? What are we doing to their property when their seawall's at 4 feet? So that's very comprehensive, and again, we're talking here milling an inch and paving an inch to make the city look nice, striping, and it's just, but we don't want to hold up on paving. We'd like to do Lighthouse Drive, we'd like to do the area south of Sample. We were talking to the mayor about doing 39th Street, probably be wise to do 39th Street before the yacht club comes in.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Because if they do any damage, we know exactly what they did. Because you're starting off with a clean slate, beautiful pavement. So that's kind of where we're headed, unless we're going to give us more different direction, but that's kind of where we're headed.
Mayor, did you have something on the paving?
No, I just wanted to echo what John was saying, but ideally, our thought has been, yes, paving, we've talked about it, we're not going to beat that dead horse, but the key is that no matter what we pave, this money's coming from American Rescue Plan dollars. And we're already down to 3.6 million that we've not encumbered already.
Encumbered, yes.
So we haven't not encumbered yet. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because over the long term, to your point, it's maintenance. So you have to budget for maintenance. And maintenance, unfortunately, of roads, and I won't even mention the other B word there, but
It's going to get mentioned.
I understand that, but I'm not going to mention, but the idea that the maintenance aspect of this costs money. And we are very lucky and we're very fortunate for the American Rescue Plan, but once we spend it, just like other pots of money that we have, I'll call them pots of gold, we then have to figure out how we're gonna find the next pot of gold, or we have to budget for it. So I say that because our thought process with John is the section that we talked about at Lake Placid, that will be finished. We've been talking about Lake Placid on the capital improvement project since 2019. We will finish the other area that John drove around, and we did a visual survey, not only of ourselves, but with our code department to figure out where we thought there were extensive issues. And then I believe we should do all of 39th Street, all the way down, all the way to the yacht club. And the reason why I say that is because when they begin the project of bringing in trucks and so on and so forth, there'll never be any debate. There will be a beautifully brand spanking new striped road. And if we have an issue, then we know where to turn. And also, we could talk about it later, but the project on 39th Street and Lighthouse Point Drive is about ready to begin. And I believe that will also go ahead and sit right there. They'll have to own some of the responsibility if there's issues there, because they're going to bring in the same truck and the same machinery. But it just keeps it clean and easy, as far as I'm concerned. But again, we'll take the direction of what the commission likes, but I think that's the best direction for us as a city at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. We have to do a better job budgeting for these maintenance items. With paving, it was always put it off.
Mm-hmm.
Not that bad. And, we just have increased traffic, we have increased construction, which, kind of turns the cycle a little bit more than it used to. If you could get 13, 14 years out of some streets, now they're down to 10, 7, or 39th Street, it's just a mess. I mean, especially from Lighthouse Drive to the yacht club, it's just terrible. So.
Hey, capital improvements, you brought that up. Mr. Johnson, go for it.
I just wanted to ask a question, it's not related to this at all, but I just wondered, what happened to the lights on 44th Street that were going to turn into electric lights?
So I've budgeted that for, it's in my budget for this coming year.
Yeah, but aren't they, I know it, but I thought they were solar.
They're solar, yes ma'am. We're going to do some tree maintenance to try to get more sun to the panels, but they're chronic problems. And
okay.
I think I can, with LED heads, I can underground the electric and hook them up to electric and have something that's much more reliable. It probably in the long run ends up being cheaper because the batteries for those things are tremendously expensive. They're like $500 a piece, and each pole takes 2, and there's 20 poles.
Didn't we
Brutal.
just spend money on before I got here? Didn't you just have to spend money on that?
It's been a few years,
Right.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that the batteries only have like about 5-year lifespan, and so we're hoping with some of this tree trimming and some cleanup that we're going to buy another year or so out of them. We've had the heads already converted to LED, so we really just need a reliable electrical hookup. It was a great idea at first, but I have the pictures of when the project was done and the trees are as high as the ceiling. Now they're 30 feet tall and they don't mix well.
Would we be able to get rid of that ugly base to it?
Yeah, because those are ugly.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, those things are just.
I don't know.
Okay.
Anything else from a capital improvement standpoint, Commission?
No.
I'm just gonna, I think the elephant in the room for all of us, to keep us all up at night, I'm gonna throw everybody up here in that, including the mayor and everybody, all the electeds, is these bridges. And it's not just the Alamanda Bridge, you can stick in any one of those island bridges, you can put the Lake Placid Bridge in there. They are big ticket items, and to Commissioner Long's point, I think that, take this year's proposed budget. This year's proposed budget is budgeting, a proposed $330,000-ish, $26,000 to go into, I think, the,
Huh?
330,
330, sorry.
330 to go into the infrastructure fund.
Yes, sir.
So That means would take us 10 years. The Alamanda Bridge in the budget didn't make the cut this year, it was requested, but at 3.85, that means it's going to take us 10 years, assuming everything else goes smashingly, which we all know everything else is not going to go smashingly. That's why you budget and prepare. It's going to take us 10 years to save for one bridge. That means we have to start working toward, and I know the mayor and others up here have worked toward grants, but we need to have all these grants these days, 9 times out of 10, you've got to have the plans ready and the money to match 9 times out of 10. So we need to even just save to hopefully have the money to match if the manna falls from heaven and we find some additional money. We arguably haven't been doing that. So this is a start. And I know we have contingency and stuff like that, but the contingency is for an emergency. It's not kind of budgeting for the maintenance.
We also need to get somebody to write these grants that is a professional at it too. That's what we were told also, that even the MPO doesn't write some of their own grants, that they have these professional people that know the right things to say. So it's all a really complicated, expensive process.
Commissioner, Mayor Van Busk.
One of the things, though, that I think that I've mentioned to everybody up here, and I know that other commissioners have mentioned it, is I think that we need to look into what we would want out of a professional grant, whether we want to look at professional grant writers, which I know some of our department heads have used before, or we utilize a professional lobbying service. And there's definitely a list of names out there, from Trip Scott to all kinds of other groups of people out there that do it on a federal level, state level, local level, but ultimately in the end, we want to figure out what's best for Lighthouse Point. And I think that personally was not added into this budget for the mere fact that we haven't had a real discussion about it, but I think it's time that we look with inside and knowing that we may be out $70,000, $80,000 or a year or 12 months or 12 months or 18 months or 2 years before we start seeing the fruits of the labor, but we'd have to stay the course. That's, that's just one of the things that comes with the lobbying aspect of it that I've recognized and even talked to several people, is that it may be 18 months or 19 months before we start to see any money come in. We might be a year before we get on a 5-year waiting list or a 3-year waiting list plan. So ultimately, in the end, I'll call it, I don't like to use this term, but ultimately, it's not about the commission sitting up here today. The may or may not, or whoever sits in this chair will never get the credit for looking forward to in 6 or 7 years when we get a grant to pay for a bridge or paving or something like that. Because the only people that are sitting up here, maybe some people sit up here, but ideally, only the people that are sitting up here will get that credit. But in reality, the people that truly got the paving or the bridge or the park are the people sitting here today preparing for that 5 years. So I would like to see us maybe not get all the full credit for it, but be the ones that kick this off in the right direction for the future. Because we to Commissioner Joffe's points, outside of even just the bridges, we have a lot of things that, maintenance-wise, we have to figure out how to pay for. So that's my push for that, and I would love to see us have a further conversation and discussion about lobbyists and what we would look for, or how to interview them, or what the process should look like for the city administration for finding somebody.
If we do go with a lobbyist, do they also handle the grant writing through their firm? I mean,
I think it's a way I understand from some of these folks, yes, they do. Some groups do, some groups don't. You know what I mean? Some of them find the right information, they bring it back to you and say, go at it. Some of them will hold your hand, some of them will write it. I mean, again, it comes back to what level of service you're willing to pay for. Sure. You know what I mean? I hate to say it like that. Mm-hmm. From what and granted, I'm not an expert. I haven't talked to a ton of them. I've just talked to several of them, just in passing and understanding what they do. And, you could get the easy single package. When I mean, just little things here and there. You could go for the Grand Slam package where they bring it all together and it's a full show and they're hard at work pushing for us. But also, that comes back to the fact that having a presence in Tallahassee, having spoken to several of them, when you show up, I know Commissioner Long has done it before, and when you show up at Tallahassee and you have a lobbyist and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 of us show up for Broward Days or any types of other things when they're doing appropriations, and we go, hey, this is us, this is Lighthouse Point, This is why it's important to us. This is why it's important to our economy. This is why, as a state representative, a state senator, this is why your vote should, our vote matters to your reelection campaign. I think that all culminates together. It's a whole package deal outside of just the lobbying group. I think it's a whole package deal.
And the lobbyists are the ones that I deal with the MPO, both federal and state. They know exactly where all the money is and all the things that are going forward and what's like with the new federal bridge thing and infrastructure thing. They know every little bit of it, and they know how to manipulate and get you involved in that. And we can look in the paper, we could look somewhere and say, oh, wow, look, this is great, this passed. But where do we go from that? We don't really know. And these people, they're phenomenal. And they told me in the MPO that since they've had these both very active lobbyists, that they are at least 4 to 5 times more money coming into them than prior, because they're just right there. And even if we're on a way smaller scale, they would still know all the things that are available and work for us. And us I went to Broward Days a few times when I first got here as a commissioner, but you're kind of lost when you just go there and you don't really have somebody to guide you around and talk to the people. You're
cold calling. You're cold calling.
Yeah, really, it is, exactly. But when you have, your lobbyists to take you around, because they know the people that you need to talk to about what you need, I think, penny saved is a penny earned. I think it would help us.
Have we ever had one here in the city?
No, not that I know of.
No, I think, you're looking at two different functions too. There's one that you have a grant writer that writes for grants that he might pull out of the Federal Register, he or she, or, other funding, state and federal funding that's, the agency-driven part of their budget, and then the other part is appropriations, and that's really where a lobbyist really takes it to that next level, because they know where they can get some money and some different things. They work with the different legislators. And we talk about Broward Days, as was brought up, Broward Days was never that successful, I think, for a lot of people, because if they really had a focus, they wanted to go up when, their people were not being hounded by 500 people just showed up for Broward Days. That you go up on Brevard Days and their offices are just nothing, because nobody's showing up to, Chippa Marcus thing. So, the lobbyists will sit there and say, here's a good time to come up because they got committee meetings this time. And again, the legislature, once that's going, the whole ship is moving. You want to get there during the committee hearings. You want to see if, someone can write a bill, if that's big, or other appropriations, where those dollars are. And, that's where the lobbyists do, and they have the relationships with, the people who are heading up those committees and appropriations especially. So I think, having a lobbyist to represent us for specific needs, I think would be critical. I think the grant writing piece that a lot of the firms do as well, because there's a lot of different pots of money up there, and a lot of them we'll never know about. They know about it.
And we're unique, and I'll just continue to say it. We have I guess soon not to be a member of the Senate, but someone with ties to Tallahassee and a representative both with ties to the city, both sides of the aisle. And I just think both of them have been untapped resources, and I know I've spoken to Representative LaMarca, and he would be an ally up there. And it's not an easy. It's a jungle up there, right?
Yeah.
But you need to have an ally. So, having a representative with ties that used to sit up here.
Exactly.
And knows what it takes. So
knows
he's an untapped resource. And
I tap him all the time, but it's interesting you say that, and not to be political, but whenever I see Senator Gary Farmer, Senator Lighthouse Point, he's never comes here, and we never really deal with him, I guess. Maybe we're lazy and we deal with Chip because we know him, but I think we need to get more of a something going with him also. He doesn't he has a bigger area to represent than Chip does, but, he needs to come and, realize we're here.
Yeah. Good point.
I think you really just have to come in with like 2 or 3 specific items of what we really need.
Yeah, that's true.
And see if there's, funding, appropriations that are available for that. You can't just say, hey, we need money. Help me, Chip.
Yeah, but
I think that's been Chip's thing, is like, you guys don't really ask me for anything in particular, So give us, hey, look, we got a problem with this bridge. Is there funding out there? who do I need to talk to in Tallahassee, and kind of work from there.
And there's more work to be done, but I do like to think over the past 6 to 8 months, we have started laying that groundwork by hiring a Kimberly Horn to look at the bridges. Because you can't just go up there and say, we need a new, Sample needs a new bridge.
Here's why we need a new bridge, here's how we're gonna fix it, this is what's gonna cost.
Yeah, here's the
Can you help?
plans, we're ready to go, your
Bring on the
money,
broken
you
piece
can
of
come
concrete.
down and take the picture in front of the beautiful bridge to get, like, it's gonna be built. And we've
They
started
like
that,
that,
but
too.
it's what? Yeah,
They like having
Yeah, exactly, no,
pictures
that's why I
taken.
mentioned it. And
They like delivering.
and we just need to keep along this path and maybe kick it into overdrive a little bit, because they're not getting any younger, these bridges.
Nope.
I think we've kicked it into overdrive.
Neither are we.
So, I'm just gonna say, I mean, we've already got a budget that provides for a lot, but it does, and I know from where it started, there was a lot more in here. It sounds like, based on Corey's presentation. It just, and maybe this is something to revisit next year, but given all the talk of bridges, the fact that I don't see a big item in here for bridge appropriation, and I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just saying, the fact that there is not a big line item here for bridges, and we spent money, don't get me wrong, but to your point about maintenance, there is not a big line item in here for bridges, doesn't sit well with me. Now, you can't always get what you want, money is the limited resource, but it does not sit well with me, so, I mean, that's my take, because that is probably, I mean, it's bridges, it's stormwater, and it's seawall. And we've been bringing these items up, and we've started going in that direction, but we're just getting started. We're just getting started here, and it's not going to get things are not getting any cheaper, so.
It's also a lot of work, Commissioner.
I understand.
And I think John, myself, you, Commissioner Johnson have all seen the time and effort it's put in, whether it's MPO, Surtax, Representative Lamarca, Representative, Vice Mayor Fisher. We've had conversations and sit-downs and talks with these folks multiple times, and it just, I feel as if it's that first part of the snowball, and, we're just inching it along. We like it to go a lot faster, but if we're not, we're pushing super hard. And we definitely are trying to put as many balls in the air and hopefully be able to juggle them all continuously.
Commissioners, continued discussion on the budget. We had capital improvements.
The money, capital improvement for the finance.
Do you have a page?
Page 97. For City Hall, you're going to carpet and whatever I think you put in here.
Paint, including roof.
The painting of, and everything. Is there a possibility that, and once again, I'm the handicap guy, but this podium that we sit on is quite dangerous if you're walking off of it, or if you're handicapped, you can't get on it. It limits the people. Maybe there should be some potential consideration of redoing this
Sir,
area.
before we discuss, is that going to happen? Is that I didn't see the two stars. Is the improvements to City Hall, is that actual budgeted?
Improvements to City Hall, yes.
Okay.
That's from American Rescue Plan dollars.
Oh, that's why it does, because it's not from the general.
Yes,
It's not from the
sorry,
general fund.
yes,
Okay.
I apologize.
No,
Yes,
you're
you
right,
can see
No,
it.
I get it, because it says it here.
Yep.
Are included based from the general fund, so, okay, so that's a actual going to happen. Or proposed actual going to happen.
Proposed, but the carpet in this place is original carpet. 20, it's 20-year-old carpet, paint, a lot of other things in this place are 20 years old, exterior, so on and so forth. And to keep with the campus style, look, also, we have a brand new fire station with a specific color palette that everybody loves. We have a recreation department, we have a brand new public works department, we're all gonna have the same, and it'd be nice to have it all, once it's done freshly painted, to look all the same.
I don't have any problem with that. My concern was this area up here for those of us that are, people in the future.
Yeah.
You know, we're all getting older. By the time, Mayor, by the time the bond gets paid off, you'll be older than me. So think about that.
Well, that's definitely something we'll look into, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Is there anything, just while we're on it, is there anything else on pages 96 through, I know I'm giving you a lot of pages, so, through 101 that is, the two asterisks means it's actually, there's money actually appropriated for it in this budget.
Correct.
If it doesn't, that means that there's no, it was requested, but there is no money appropriated for it. But if it had the little parentheses ARPA funding, that also means that the money is proposed to be used.
Yes, it's not earmarked, it's not, but it's out of that 3.4
But
million.
if we pass the budget
Yes.
with this, that's where the money's going to be
Yes,
allocated.
from where the money will be allocated.
Okay.
Correct.
It looks like it's only two items. Improvements to city hall.
Yes, and
Paved police facility.
And we did look at, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was one for dredging. I thought it was also on the ARPA money.
I saw the 250 for dredging.
No, but it's not there but the ARPA money, the dredging would come out of ARPA money.
The 250?
No, something else, I think.
No, it's 250 on page 99.
There was,
Sorry, my question would be, by the time we got this survey and actually started engaging and everything else, would that even be next fiscal year?
I had the boat going down my canal today. I
They're
saw
going to be,
it.
well, because they're dredging someone's seawall.
No,
around
the
seawall.
survey,
Oh,
survey,
okay.
that was the survey.
they're-
Went down today, I saw him.
They,
I called him up, I'm like, is that
if
the boat?
putting it all together, Commissioner, if we do the survey, then we have to do a seagrass survey, which has to be done between May and August, Chuck?
June to September.
Sorry, was off by a month here on either side, I apologize.
Get out of here.
I know. So we have to go ahead and do the seagrass study. Once we get the seagrass study, we could physically begin the dredging or the putting out the bid process, but ideally, I think because we had such a lull in between the last survey and then dredging, the idea is to get the information, see where, to Commissioner Joffe's points, where, if we just dredge down to 5 feet and it's now at 4'4" or 4'3", what kind of sedimentation we're building up on certain canals. And then there's also 4 canals that we were never able to get to because of cost, 4 or 5.
At least 4.
It was 4 or 5, I can't remember the exact number, but I ultimately,
They got cut the one we had.
we got to cut the budget because we didn't have the funds, but ideally, we would finish those off, plus any of the other ones, put it together, and again, I'll use this term, I like it, go on a maintenance program. So we know every 3 years, we need to put 250, without being said, into the budget for dredging, or 300, or whatever we see.
And do it.
Yeah.
That's the key. I mean, you had budgeted, the project that we just did on the paving project that we just did for
Lake Placid? Lake Placid.
75,000 or whatever it was, that was budgeted eons ago, and 2 sections for 600,000. So, basically, I think we hit a home run doing that at this point with that money. But if you're gonna put it in the budget to do it, then, and it's capital, then you should do it. And just not kick a can down the road. Otherwise, you end up behind the 8 ball.
Kyle's not a can kicker.
Nope. There's no doubt about that.
On page 101, the tennis center bathroom renovation, including converting a storage closet to family bathroom, is that, if we have to cut something, is that necessary? I understand you have to maybe renovate the existing restrooms, but...
So the idea behind this tennis center renovation, one of our biggest complaints that we get during our multiple events that Becky hosts and the recreational committee is the lack of bathrooms and how fast they get disgusting. And having been to multiple events, I would say that there's no doubt about it. We actually have a storage closet that used to be used for tennis balls. It is no longer used as a storage once we transitioned into the new FM tennis. And our goal is to make it into a family-style bathroom with a changing table, the fold-down changing table. They get a little more friendly for our family members that are doing there. And also we'll add an availability for another bathroom, and then with remodeling some of that stuff, we may be able to improve the cleanliness over time. I mean, if you look at how they were built, they're just, you know,
Tile.
they're literally, they're 4 walls and some tile.
Okay.
And making sure that we're utilizing it to the best of our ability. And, you know, we've had a couple local contractors that are coming in that I think are very happy to help the city and do a really nice job. And I think $30,000 for a brand spanking new bathroom plus a remodel of the 2 other bathrooms is much needed.
Okay.
I think it's misleading to say the tennis center because those bathrooms get used for the park.
Correct, I think that's.
You know, it's
They
not
happen
the
to be
tennis
physically
center. It's not
attached
the
to the
people
tennis
playing
center.
tennis.
Right,
It's-
okay.
it's
I guess we shouldn't utilize the tennis center bathroom, we should use on the future for Frank McDonough bathrooms or something like that, so it could be, but the idea was not for the tennis members, although we'll help them, but it's for all Saturday sports, Sunday sports, any sports day every day of the week, basically.
Okay, understood, okay. The library, carpet replacement and lifting of stacks. What do you mean by lift, and that's $81,000?
That's not, just so we center, but I don't think that made the cut. That was requested, but not,
Was requested but did not make the cut.
Oh, okay.
not to say it doesn't, if you want to explain, by all means, but.
What do you mean by lifting of stacks?
I think you gotta lift the bookshelves up to replace the carpet.
Oh, okay. And I see that's for also including the new wing, so, okay.
I still think Kyle could lift up the stacks himself if we really, really asked him to. But if you pay somebody, so be it.
I tried.
Or Wyatt.
Wyatt probably can do it.
Anything else, commissioners?
That's good.
Public comments?
Huh?
Public comments?
Do we have that at this?
Yeah,
We do.
on the agenda.
Opening up the floor, public comments. Start in the audience, on the budget. No one coming forward. We have
2 people.
2 people on Zoom. We'll open it up to Zoom. If you want to comment on the budget, please raise your hand so we know if you want to talk to us. Don't see anybody raising their hand. No one has come up from the peanut gallery, so we'll close public comment. Parting shots? No?
I have just a question, Mayor. We have police cars that are unfunctional as far as police cars are concerned.
Yes.
We have a Chevy pickup truck, I guess Simona or whatever it is. It's a little gold-colored pickup truck that desperately needs any kind of repair or could potentially be dangerous, and Chuck can talk about that. And I guess that it's just used for running around and picking things up and stuff. Is it possible that when we buy the new police cars, that one of the police cars could be used for that? The bus driver, I understand, uses it to go over to pick up the bus. Before somebody gets injured or hurt, if the thing is in that disrepair, should we entertain doing something with an older, old car that we're potentially going to get rid of? That's all.
I mean, I have no issues. I mean, when we surplus out these vehicles, if there's something that we could surplus out or swap vehicles, if Chuck doesn't need that little pickup and could use something else that's maybe in better shape from any of the other departments that are surplusing out vehicle, I have no issues with swapping those out.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? All right, then we'll adjourn. We'll reconvene at 6:30 for our regular meeting. Thank you.
Good job. Starting this.
Hey Chuck, good job, Corey. I'm going to ask you about the water reuse progress in Pompano, for Pompano.
Hey, Corey.
So when you're ready,